Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, April 10th, 2023, and this is episode 722 of Living Free in Tennessee. And today I'm going to talk about an update on how breakthrough is going for me as my word of the year. I've learned a lot about break. Guess I need to work on the through. That's the overall summary. We're going to talk about that. We will also have our usual Monday segments today. So Tales from the Prepper Pantry and all that jazz. And I'm kind of had to giggle because I started the live stream with my mic turned off on YouTube. And luckily I got 2 words in and I was like, my little blippy lights aren't blipping. So that probably means my mic is off. So sorry about that little glitch at the beginning. This mic has phantom power, and it's a condenser mic that I used to use to record rock and roll. And so it has phantom power, and that means that if I don't have the phantom power turned on, then no noise happens. So I had to turn the phantom power on. I did want to mention something before I go into the event of the day. And that was that, well, I want to talk about the guest form. I have been getting people reaching out saying, how do I get on the show? And I say, fill out the guest form. And then I've been getting the guest form not filled out all the way. Now, if the thing you did not do is give me a link to your headshot, that's not a big deal. But if you skip other important things like how I can contact you, or you typo your email, or you don't put the questions in, or you don't put the bio in, it's not going to make it through to the scheduling step. And here's why. When we interview people on the show, I want to have somebody who does a great interview, because this is partially entertainment, right? It's not just informational. And part of having a great interview is knowing in advance some of the things you're going to say. And so if we have 5 to 8 questions that you tell me, like, speak as if you're Nicole and write these questions, right? Then it makes things go better. Now, if you paste your notes in as an outline without it in question form, I find that very hard to work through, because usually the notes don't really tell me what's going on. But if you write it as a narrative, that works really well. So I'm pretty picky about that form being filled out. And I've had like a good number of them in the last 2 weeks where it doesn't have the questions, or it doesn't have like a quick bio about the person, which also will help you get more traction if you're on my show, because I can, like, I may know you, but I may not know some things about you. And if you throw a bio in there, then I'll be like, oh, I didn't know that Sam was a used car salesman, or whatever it is, right? So if you would like to be our guest on the show, the best way to do that is fill out the guest application. That's at livingfreeintennessee.com. And then in the upper navigation, or the hamburger navigation on your phone, it says guest form, fill it out. It doesn't ask that many questions. I like to, when I'm filling out a form like this, look at the questions and then put them on another document and then paste them in case something goes wrong, so I don't lose all my work, especially something like if you're going to do really well on an interview and you put the questions in, you might want to think through those questions before you put them in. Anyway, that's how you get on the show. Those emails go to me. I schedule once or twice a month. I'll send out a scheduling link, and I'm usually scheduling a month or 2 out on the show. I actually stopped sending scheduling links last month because I was scheduled so far out. So but we're closer now to not super far out. And Tactical says, no babies yet. Hey, Tactical, is the sheep in labor? That's what I want to know. Apparently I use the word sheep to mean singular. Is the ewe in labor? I just want to know. We have a surprise baby on the way, I believe, but we will see. We will see. Anyway, I also wanted to talk to you about the featured event for today's show. I've enjoyed doing one featured event per show once I started doing that, because what's going on in our network as it grows and as more and more people get excited about sharing best practices and all of that, we have more and more events to share. And I was finding myself feeling sort of like event schizophrenic, like both in the events I'm running, like the chicken processing workshop that's coming up in June, and in highlighting things that other people are doing. But I think it's really important when you're getting into a community and want to make relationships with people to do your best to meet people in person, but you can also meet them virtually. And John Bush at Live Free Academy did a free webinar called the Great Financial Reset Response webinar. And that is available right now through midnight tonight for free at livefree.academy. What is this? Hold on. I have the wrong link in front of me. Blah. It's livefree.academy/OP/the Great Financial Reset Response webinar. And I'm going to, for the YouTube people, it's in the show notes, guys. So you can just click on it. I'm going to throw the link in the YouTube chat as well, just so you see it. And I think anybody who's afraid of CBDCs and other things that are going on in our economy, it's a good idea to expose yourself to solutions. And from what I understand is that webinar went great. So I would check that out. Again, midnight tonight, that's no longer available. So livefree.academy/OP/the Great Financial Reset Response webinar. And every one of those words in that long URL has a hyphen. So just FYI. Also, I want to thank today's show sponsor, and that's Paul Wheaton of Permies.com. Paul Wheaton has 4 days left on his Kickstarter, and then it is done. And he has far exceeded his goal, as he always does. Low Tech Laboratory is the name of the Kickstarter, and that's at Kickstarter.com. And just go over there and type in Low Tech Laboratory, and it should come up, or use the link that's in my show notes, and then he'll know I referred you. And there are just all sorts of goodies you can get for just $1, right? So if you got $1 and want to get a bunch of resources on permaculture and natural building and other low-tech solutions, this is the one to grab. For just $1, get a ton of stuff. For $100, you get a whole bunch more stuff. So it just depends what your budget is. That's all over at Kickstarter.com. And thank you to Paul Wheaton and Permies.com for sponsoring the show. Finally, if you want to send me an email or anything else, you can do that. Send it to Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. That's NICOLE at livingfreeintennessee.com. Or if you don't want to remember that, just go to livingfreeintennessee.com, click on contact, and those messages come to me. Before I share the live stream schedule with you, we're going to do our first segment of the day because I feel like it's been all announcements so far. Also, guys, in the live stream, if you have questions along the way, put the first words in all caps. I answered one in text before we started because I was hanging out in the chat before we started. But our first segment of today's show is Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. And it's been a really fun day in the pantry for me, or a fun week, because we had Easter dinner. Easter was yesterday, and we do dinner here at about 2 p.m. for holidays. And here's why. A lot of the people who would come to an Easter gathering at my place also have livestock. And often we are busy with our livestock in the morning, and we're busy after dark. And if you have Easter dinner at 6 p.m. or something, people who would normally be able to come can't come. Lunch seems a little early because, especially for Easter, people are going to church. Church gets out at 12 or 1, and you can't make lunch at noon. So I have settled on dinner as the solution to the problem of when to meet. So we usually have 2 o'clock, or, whenever the thing I'm cooking is done cooking. And here's what we had. So I didn't need to go to the store for Easter dinner because it all came out of the pantry. And we had leg of lamb. I know which one it was. I won't share on the podcast who it was, but it was delicious. And I scored it and shoved garlic in all over. And then I did a rub heavy on the rosemary because Tracy was not here and she's not super keen on rosemary, but everybody else who's here was. I put not garlic. I put salt on the outside, and I would have put black pepper, but I haven't found my black pepper corns yet in the kitchen, like reassembly from the kitchen remodel. So that was that. And then I roasted it in the oven on a bed of onions and cabbage. And it was so good. So I put it in at like 9 in the morning. And as you all know, I'm working on Sundays now to do coffee orders. So I did my coffee order. I like put the leg in, then did my coffee orders and just let it get to about 140 degrees. I didn't want it. So 135 or 132 is what a lot of people will do to get like the rare and the medium rare. And the last time I did that with a leg of lamb, it was a little tough. And I could have sous vide'd it put it in the sous vide for 24 hours and that would have made it tender. But I was like, okay, we'll try this, like roast it a little bit longer to see if that makes it a better mouth feel. And it was perfect. So that took, I don't know, it roasted at 325 from 9:30-ish in the morning till about 1:30. And I took it out twice to check temperature. And then that second time I took it out, it was up to temperature. So it just came out and let it rest until we ate it about 2:30. So I let it rest for quite an amount of time. I just put tinfoil over it, left it on the oven, like the stove top over the oven, which is still warm. And then I threw the baked things in. So there was mashed potatoes that Tracy sent down with Steve. And I had them in a casserole dish and just threw it in the oven right after the lamb came out. I took a Tramontina squash from the basement of base camp because I don't have them in my root cellar space right now, and cubed that up, tossed it in some melted smoked pork fat and salt, pepper, garlic, and smoked paprika went on that, roasted it. I did a homemade gravy, and Trisha, who visited, brought some flour. So I actually had wheat flour thickened gravy for this one. And then I did a wild edible salad, which is actually the thing that took me the most time to make because I had to go find the things to eat. And it's kind of an Easter tradition for me that I look for some edible flower or another to go on the salad to make it look pretty. And then the watercress was up, and I did have non-wild salad. I had actual lettuce from my garden, but I try to do the salad piece of this meal from outside and not from the store. I did have cabbage as a backup if I needed more bulk, but I didn't use that. And then I found, so Hairy Vetch is now just starting to grow. And actually I found a pretty big amount of it right by the banana bush on my hillside garden. So I'll probably do a video about that. And it's not flowering yet, but I did some shoots. I took some pea shoots from the garden. The radishes were not quite ready for me to justify harvesting them. And then I also found one asparagus coming up out of the asparagus patch. So I picked that and just diced it up on the whole salad. So that was our wild edible salad, and it looked beautiful. And we had, for the flour, was wild mustard flowers. And then I did a homemade dressing of like a raspberry vinegar, balsamic vinegar, garlic, salt, pepper, oil, and mayonnaise. And so it was sort of like a creamy raspberry vinegar. It was delicious. And so like the vinegar so everything I've told you about, guys, is like some of the spices didn't come from here and the vinegar did not come from here. And I used avocado oil and that did not come from here. I usually use olive oil. That also does not come from here. Everything else came from here. Then we had cheeses, meats, and pickled things. So it turned out pretty good. Since all of us in the holler are basically not eating very many carbs, I did not do a dessert, and hopefully nobody missed that. It's also sun tea season. So I woke up Sunday morning and it was supposed to rain until 10 or 11 and then stop. But it was just like, woo, sunny and beautiful. Thanks, Faith, for that message. And I looked outside and I just thought, sun tea. And so I went out and cut chocolate mint, put it in a jar, put a couple of bags of Earl Grey tea, cold water, mason jar outside in the sun. And it was so funny because I've had a couple little glasses of it today, and I was like, tactical. I just love the sun tea. It's sun tea season. And I'm going to have sun tea every day for the rest of my life. And I'm like, and really what's going to happen is I'm going to have sun tea for this week. And then I'm going to get sick of sun tea. And he's like, no, you'll get sick of making it. And I'm like, no, what'll happen is I'll leave it in the fridge too long because I'll forget it's there. And then it develops mold if you leave it in the fridge too long. And then I'll stop doing sun tea. But that's just my sun tea cycle. Other people keep it up through the summer. So I love sun tea season. It's also great to have a real kitchen again from a harvest cooking standpoint, because I was able to pick food and harvest food and all of that stuff and process it in my own darn kitchen and do the dishes as I went, and like the dishwasher works. So it's really funny how dysfunctional I was without a functional kitchen. And now it's not 100% back, but it's enough that I, today on my to-do list, when I do my schedule, I think about what's for dinner and what time one might want to start cooking the thing that's for dinner. And if the thing needs to come out of the freezer and be defrosted, and today was a defrosted, it surprisingly didn't have a lot of leftovers. I cooked the right amount of food for the number of people here. So one leg fed 5 people with a couple of pieces left over. So that's just context there. And I don't know. It was just really cool. And from a harvest cooking standpoint, I could just cycle through it and be done. The pantry audit, I'm doing a deep audit of my pantry because my eating habits have changed a lot in the last 2 years. And so anything left behind that is not something I eat is getting stink eye and given away most of it. I was keeping some of the things I wouldn't eat on a normal basis as things I could give away if other people are hungry and come to my house looking for food. But yeah, I love sun tea. I might actually get around to it once a week this time, because I'm just, with this kitchen redo, my kitchen's like 9,000 times more functional. I didn't realize how dysfunctional my kitchen was before. Like, it was as functional as it could be, but it's way more functional now. Like, the design is better. It's the stuff has places to go where it should be, sort of thing. And the other kitchen, things went where things fit based on drawer size or cabinet size. Anyway, so the pantry audit's moving slowly, but it's moving along. What's been in the way is that if you think, somebody was talking to me, it was Ryan. He was talking about, those games that they have squares that move on a grid, and there's one open square, and you have to figure out how to get the picture to be a picture. That's kind of how my house has been since the bathroom redo started, right? And every time I move something from one place, I have to move something somewhere else. I have to make a space to move the stuff. And so what's happened with all of this as things are coming back together is more spaces are made where things should go, and then things that are where they should not be, they can go into where they should be. And it's a lot of work, but it's actually really nice to get the audit in progress, and then really give stink eye to stuff that I've had for 15 years here that I've never used, and food that I'm storing that should go to somebody who actually eats carbs, because I'm down to, like, I've got jars and jars of oat groats, and those last really long, and they're taking up space. I have a shelf, like I'm pointing up in the video. I have a shelf that goes along the ceiling on one side of my house, and I store jars there, and the jars have canned goods in them, or they have dry goods in them. And what that means is that I've got like 5 jars of oat groats in the kitchen above the wall, taking up space where I could have things I actually use there and not have to run outside to the prepper pantry to get something, right? Because when you organize your kitchen and your home and your pantry, you want the stuff you use closer and the things you don't use very much further away, and then you have your overflow storage. And I'm looking at those oat groats going, like, it's going to be probably 9,000 years for me to eat all of those. So it's it's definitely something I'm giving stink eye to. My mom, who stays here, does eat oatmeal, and we have an oat roller, and she loves rolling the oats here, and they taste so much better that way. It's like freshly rolled oats are totally different than the Quaker ones you get at the store. And so I'm like, maybe I only need 2 jars for mom because she goes through so very little of it. And I have a comment in, I'm looking forward to more functional kitchen myself. And I refer to that as household Rubik's Cube. Yeah, that's basically what I'm doing, is a household Rubik's Cube. Yes. And it is a permaculture kitchen. I have had a permaculture kitchen with some caveats going for a while now, but this permaculture kitchen is an actual permaculture kitchen. And some of the decisions I've made visually, some of the rednecks in the holler disapprove of. Apparently, the bright red cabinets and the stainless steel tables clash visually, according to one of my neighbors. And I'm like, I actually think it looks good. And it's my kitchen. So I get to make that decision. He's like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, yes, it does. I also had a question, and somebody missed how you make sun tea. And I guess I didn't say how you make sun tea. You put tea bags, and I take things that make tea from my yard, like blackberry bush leaves, bee balm, chamomile or echinacea. I have that right now. Well, the chamomile not, but the echinacea, yes. And or peppermint. I have like peppermint, chocolate mint, apple mint, creek mint. I don't know what creek mint is, but I noticed that it was growing in the creek today. And I'll take a few sprigs of those, put them in a half-gallon mason jar is how I do it. You could do it in a quart or a pint, whatever. Put it out in the sun and walk away for an hour or two. So, like Sunday, I just got up, put it out, and started cooking and started roasting and did my things. And eventually I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's tea colored. Cool. And so then I got it. And then you serve it over ice if you don't refrigerate it, or I have it in the fridge now. So it is done. Any particular tea? I mean, you can do it with just the herbs I said in the yard, or you can add any tea you want. It can be a rooibos tea. It can be an Earl Grey tea. It can be a green tea. Doesn't matter. And yes, you can use raspberry leaves. All of those things can happen. So it's pretty cool. You can even put like cucumbers and stuff in there when you have cucumbers coming off your garden. You're making an infused water. It's delicious. I'm also going to be making sauerkraut for the spring workshop. I was supposed to do that this weekend. And anybody who was following me on social media this weekend, I set my 3 things with 3 very simple tasks on Saturday. And Saturday's my day of rest. It's my day off. But then I was like, I want to do household stuff. So then I did these, like clean the house for 2 hours was one of them. The other one, I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, I wanted to go get feed for the animals, which is an hour drive from here now where I'm getting it. And I wanted to work on my mountain of paperwork because I have Paperwork Mountain. So it's getting a little bit of work all the time. And I just kept going in my 3 things and update. Wow, that feed run took a lot longer than I thought it would. Like the whole day, and then I kept getting interrupted. So like the 2 hours of cleaning, the way I do that is I set a timer on my phone, or I set an alarm, and it's like uninterrupted 1 hour, and then I get a coffee, and then another uninterrupted hour, or whatever it is. Well, if you're interrupted, you stop the timer. So it took me like maybe 3 or 4 hours to get the 2 hours of cleaning done. So the whole day I did wrong, and it was pretty funny. But I got it all done, and my reward was to be Garden 30, because I love playing in the garden, and it was rainy as could be on Saturday. It was like terrible weather. But I was like, I'll just do seedling stuff inside or whatever. And by the time I got through my 3 things, it was 6 o'clock, and I hadn't started cooking dinner yet. And I had told the holler neighbors to come over, so I did pile of meat for dinner. Pile of meat is like you just get any meats from the freezer and you cook them all and you serve a pile of meat for dinner. Works great if you got people doing keto carnivore around you. And I did some side dishes, but basically that's what we had for dinner on Saturday night. And I didn't get to making sauerkraut. I didn't get to Garden 30. I also didn't get to it Sunday because we had people over for half the day for Easter, and I roasted coffee for the other half a day, and I cooked that meal. So yeah, I got to get on it. And in order to do that, I have to go back to household Rubik's Cube, except for now it's inter-household Rubik's Cube, because all of my appliances, like small kitchen appliances, like the blender and the food processor, are not here. They are in the basement of base camp because I moved a bunch of stuff over there to get it out of the way of this project. And now it's time to bring it back. But before I bring it back, I want to get one of the shelving units from the basement there that I have that are on wheels, like the racks, to put the appliances on. And that's going to require me going to base camp because I keep asking for help with this and it's not happening. So I'm going to have to make it happen this evening so that I can make sauerkraut with the food processor that I don't want to move down here until I have a place to put it away. And the place to put it away is not in my kitchen. It's in the shelf that will be in the pantry. Yes, I am crazy. In case you were wondering, that this stuff goes on in my brain all the time. I just don't usually verbalize it to y'all. So this morning I got up and I had the I had a cup of coffee with Tactical this morning, which I'm working by the time he comes up this direction, but I wasn't this morning. I took a little extra time for me this morning, and I did stream of consciousness, and he likes to think about one thing at a time, and I was in full on scatter mode. So it was like this topic and that topic and the other topic. And I was like, hey, I'm sorry, dude. I'm just like, I'm in full ADHD scatter mode. And if you don't want to be around it, you should probably leave because I'm just going to keep talking about stuff. So that, that is what it is. Danny, good to see you too. Enjoying watching our chicken tractor on steroids Greg put together. Yep. I'm about to do a deep mulching situation with my chickens, but my chickens have not arrived yet, and they're going to arrive super small. But that is how we are handling compost on the homestead now that the pigs are gone. We were just feeding everything to the pigs before, and that was, that was part of the fun. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you about the live stream schedule this week, and you want to hear this. It's pretty flipping cool, guys. It's really, 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 really cool. Tomorrow, 12:30, I go live with John Willis, like I always do. Do you know who we're having on the show with us? Do you want to guess? Anybody want to guess? Some of you already know because you've already commented on it. You can't answer. The one, the only, Joel Salatin from Polyface Farm, the lunatic farmer, is coming on with us at 12:30. We will keep that live stream to about an hour. I was super excited about it when he said yes a few weeks ago, and I didn't want to announce it too soon. So it's happening tomorrow, 12:30. Thursday, Spicy Sisters are back at 1 p.m., and that's with Amy Dingman. That's right. Our monthly Spicy Sister Live is on Thursday. And then we'll wrap it up Friday at 10:30, our actual real time for Homestead Happenings. I've been doing them early because of things going on where I have to I need to drive to Camden and back one more time. So I'll probably do another early Homestead Happenings next week, perhaps. Homestead Happenings, 10:30 a.m. Central. That's right. That's where we talk about everything going on in the homestead. And maybe we'll have a new baby lamb. Maybe not. I don't know. Only time will tell. Maybe some more birds will hatch in the chicken coop. So I think you'll really enjoy those live streams this week. Next up, we have the weekly shopping report from Joe. And this one's about a week old, but I hadn't read it yet. And this would be a pre-Sunday Easter shopping adventure. I actually went into a store because I wanted cashews this week. I went into Aldi to buy some cashews, and I did it on Good Friday. Boy, was that interesting to watch. There was a lot of angst going on about holiday meals, and I was really thankful that I made the decision this year not to do anything that required me going to the store to buy things to do the things. But I got my cashews and got out of there fast because people were like super angsty and wanted the right thing and then couldn't find the right thing and the prices were higher and oh my goodness. Okay, so they did 2 trips this week. We took our first trip Sunday, which is different than our usual time on Saturday. This may affect the stock levels depending on store schedules. However, I saw no large changes that could mean a deeper problem. Traffic was heavy. I'd have thought it'd be lighter on Sunday. It did not look like churchgoers, at least not dressed in their Sunday best. And I would say the Sunday before Easter, some people start hitting it to buy like whatever pie makings they're going to get. Dollar Tree was first. They're looking a little unkempt. Stock levels didn't look too different, but there's but we're a little lower in some shelves in the food aisles. Other than some browsing, I just grabbed a drink in there. Home Depot was next. Store was weekend busy. By the way, I also went to Lowe's on Good Friday, and wow. Just wow. Everybody was getting ready to do projects this weekend. There was plenty of stock around. A 2x4x8 was $3.35, which is what it was last week. Aldi was next. We found everything we wanted, including heavy cream. I too bought some heavy cream there because I did not remember to pick up my milk last Tuesday. So tomorrow I'm back on my raw milk. While I don't see any new price jumps, the bill was certainly higher. Yeah, so I, having bought the cashews and the heavy whipping cream, was pretty surprised by how much higher that was compared to the last time I bought cashews and heavy whipping cream. Food City was last. I got one of only 3 16-pound bags of Meow Mix, a box of Friskies, 2 packs of waste-free peanut butter, and that was $61. Maybe we should get some Vaseline. Okay, so inflation, guys, inflation. Today's trip included Walgreens and Waggles, and Walgreens is affiliated with Kroger. 2 sections of coolers were covered, indicating new product coming soon. We didn't get food, but it would be a backup source for if things got weird. A gallon of untainted regular is $3.99. Next up, we have the frugality tip from Janet, and this is going to include a link, which I'm putting in the comments as well. So Janet, who I mentioned last time we skipped the frugality tip, that I was pretty sure I got an email with a bunch of frugality tips, and I thought it was from Janet, and it was not. And then she's like, well, since you called me by name, here's some frugality tips. So thanks for that, Janet. This is her first one. And this is something that costs about $5.25 on Amazon. It's called a ketchup saver. And it's a little it's a cone-shaped thing. Gosh, if only I could show y'all on the live stream my browser window with this link pulled up. Here's the idea. Have you ever had a bottle of something that you were like, there's a little bit in the bottom and I got to get gravity to get the thing out? Well, how many times have you constructed all sorts of weird to get that bottle to stay there because you didn't want to stand there and hold it, okay? That's me with laundry detergent, shampoo. I'll add water to shampoo and switch it around to get it out. And Dawn dish soap, ketchup if you use ketchup. Well, this ketchup saver device, $5.25 on Amazon, holds the bottle for you so you don't have to mess with it. See, that's a smart expenditure of money if you got the $5.25, right? I thought it was a pretty good one. That helps you use the last bits in the bottles that you have. Looks like, by looking at the design, I bet you if you have a 3D printer that there are on Thingiverse, that there are similarly purposed plans that you can download for free and print on your 3D printer. I didn't go look, but I bet you totally could do that. So that was a cool frugality tip from Janet. And then Operation Independence, our last segment before I jump into the main topic of today's show. I am pretty sure that Tweedledum, who I was just going to call dumb, but then it sounded mean. So it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum are what I call the 2 Katahdin sheep that we have. Tactical calls them Amy and something, and it's not Amy and Ashley, which are somebody's children, but it's something in Amy, but another A name. And anyway, Tweedledum has developed quite the udder. I actually touched it today. They're not these sheep aren't super thrilled about being handled. I've noticed one of her teats is bigger than the other, so I'm a little worried about mastitis, and I'll be doing some research on what mastitis looks like. And she's laying down, and when we got up there, the boy sheep were separate from the girl sheep, but the girl sheep were all around Tweedledee. And I would say, based on that udder size, if we're going to have, I don't know why else your udder gets big, but I'm pretty sure we got babies on the way. Now, last time I was pretty sure about this, 8 weeks later, babies came on the way. But I did some math, and I realized that Tweedledee gave birth in January, right? So she probably was impregnated in July. Tweedledum, her last interaction with a ram that it could have even been until 2 weeks ago was in mid-October. So I counted on my little fingers, this is the week or next week is the week, unless it's a very extra long pregnancy, she should be giving birth. So, and that means that she got pregnant, the day she left, probably. So that could be really cool. I'm looking forward to baby lambs. We have LGDs in the pasture with them, and Tactical and I have been kind of going back and forth. I'm tempted to separate them from the rams and the LGDs. Tactical kind of wants to observe the situation, so that's why he popped in to say no babies yet. And I asked him if the sheep looked like she was in labor. But from an operation independent standpoint, assuming that whatever is born is one that we can keep to make more babies or one that we can process to eat, that means we have turned grass into meat again. And that's pretty cool on a homestead. With that, it's time for the main topic of today's show. And that is the break and breakthrough. Every year, I do a word of the year. And I got the idea from Jenny, who, if you guys are on the MeWe group, you've talked to Jenny, because she did that to make some really important changes in her life. And when she did that, she took a very difficult situation in her life and turned it around and has worked hard ever since then. Very proud of her for building the life she wants. She had a much more uphill battle than I've ever had in my life. And she just keeps walking one step at a time uphill. And sometimes there's a mudslide and then she gets up and starts walking up the hill again. So part of her motivation is that she has done the word of the year. So what is the word of the year? The word of the year is a word you focus on to address something in your life that you want to change. This year, my word is breakthrough. In 2020, my word was grow. And why I do it is it fits really well with my 3 things method and my life strategic plan that I have for myself, to have one word to think about on a ongoing basis. It's very simple to keep a word in mind. And I have found it totally overlaps with that method really well. And why I do it is that I want to continue growing as a person, growing as a podcaster, growing as a coffee roaster. And I use these words to improve my situation and myself. And I think the way I find my word is, maybe everybody does it differently, it's through a lot of reflection. You know, for me, I start my word of the year on January 1st, although I started breakthrough before January 1st this year, because I was done with last year's word. I can't actually remember what it was anymore, but I was done with it. And I start thinking, what's going well? What do I wish was going better? Why aren't these things going better? And I take walks and I think about it. I will write about it in my journal. I'm an actual pen and paper writer. Other people aren't. Some people will type about it on the phone. I'll go look at what other people who have similar challenges in their lives are doing. And eventually I'll think, this is the thing I think that's most important for me. And I've had different words since. I think grow may have been my first word of the year, and that was in 2020. I can't remember if that was my first one or not, but it was a very educational word for me. And I did grow in 2020 quite a bit. I grew my businesses. I grew as a person. I grew my network. Like, lots of things grew in 2020. And that was a very hard year to grow in. And that's the trap. The trap of a word that you choose is you're thinking, I'm going to choose love and I'll have all the love from all the people. And the trap of choosing a word of the year is it seems like you need to experience the opposite, or the dark, what I call the dark side of the word. There's like a dark side of the word and the light side of the word. And when you experience the dark side, that's often the catalyst for embracing the light side. It's like we have to struggle to have the benefit, right? And so every time I choose a word and I tell Jenny, she's like, oh, watch out, man, that one. Because she's always like, I know what the dark side could be. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I thought about that. But I know the trap is there. And I know I need to go through I need to go through Death Valley to get to the beautiful trees on the other side or whatever. And this year I chose breakthrough. And I knew when I choose breakthrough, I was like, It's probably going to be a lot of work this year, but I chose it because I keep coming up against a ceiling in growing the podcast, in growing as a public speaker, in growing as a homesteader, in growing as just as a person. And I hit that ceiling and I don't break through it. And I'm not thinking like glass ceiling because I'm a girl or anything. Like it's like I'm almost over the edge and then I come back. And I thought this year I'd like to go over the edge and really see what can happen with the Living Free in Tennessee community, with Self-Reliance Festival, with Hollow Roast Coffee, with my relationships, with my homestead, right? There's been a lot of work put in on this homestead since 2020, like a lot of work and a lot of time. And so I chose breakthrough. Yeah, Paul, I'm looking for the tipping point. And I've had a lot of opportunities thrown my way. And as I said, I started working on this word in probably October, November already. And I didn't really share what it was until later, right? But it's been really interesting because the trap of breakthrough is in the word, and the word is break. So I have watched everything break this year. And like many of you have seen my house break, because I put video up of the house breaking, and I got into 2 major projects in my home because I had a rotting house problem and I had other weird stuff. It was like rotting house in the bathroom and weird stuff in the kitchen. And then next thing I knew, I also had rotting problems in the kitchen. As it turned out, it was the cause of the weird stuff in the kitchen. Who knew? I guess if you build your house into the side of a hill and don't properly deal with the drainage and send water under a house for 40 years, you end up with issues. Who knew? Anyway, we stopped the water problem 2 years ago. So that part's handled. And I knew I was going to have to get into something. I didn't know I was going to get into things as major as how much my house broke. And when my house broke, guys, I kind of broke with it. In a lot of ways, I broke with it because I am a person who regenerates in her home environment. And if your home is not functional and you're that kind of person, you don't get to regenerate at all. And it's like months of not regenerating. Along the way, I've also had relationships break pretty majorly. A couple at risk of breaking, and a couple, like, not romantic relationships. It's just people I do business with, people I'm friends with, all of that. People I thought I trusted, breaking trust in some pretty major ways. And those things broke. And I've had boundaries that I've put down that are pretty clear, broken. And it's been all about the break, man. I've had personal internal breakdowns. And I haven't talked about it much on the podcast. I've probably alluded to some of the things, but it's because I know psychologically I wasn't right, or I haven't been right. It hasn't been like, man, I'm in a deep depression, I need to go to an institution, or I'm ready to talk to a counselor. I'm like, something's not right in here. Heart, mind, whatever. I'm breaking. I'm falling apart. I'm shattering. I'm not holding it together. This is not like me. I'm letting myself give myself excuses for things. I don't do that. Right. And then I'll do a podcast reminding myself to, like, pull myself up by my big girl panties and get moving, because if you stop moving, you die. Right. So, but there's been something very deeply negatively emotional going on with me. And I talked to my mom about it today a little bit, because I realized this morning when I had my ADD conversation with Tactical that I haven't talked about what's going on with me emotionally, but it has impacted my behavior around other people and probably caused people to be like, what is up with her? Like, she used to be a different person. And that's not it. It's just that I get thoughtful. And this is something going on that does not have a catalyst. So when you have a relationship breakup, there's a reason you're sad, right? and I'm not like sad is not what's going on with me. It's just something unbalanced. When you have great stress in your family, it impacts you emotionally, right? You start breaking down. Um, I have no catalyst. It's just something that, I mean, all the things I just mentioned might be the catalyst. I don't know. I think the catalyst for this one, as I think about it, has been that it's time for me to progress in some big ways and to grow in some big ways and to break through some barriers that I have put down for myself. And so there's the catalyst is it's time for me to shed my current lobster shell. And in order to do that, I have to be uncomfortable in the lobster shell, to use the metaphor that some of us have heard. And then I'll shed it and I'll come out and grow a new shell, right? So my boundaries, my mental boundaries are here, and my head is pressing up against them, and that's uncomfortable, and that has caused me to have a lot of breakdowns internally. And I am aware that the world appears to be breaking in many ways. And all of that has led me to fully feel the brunt of the word break in breakthrough. But there's another kind of break. You know, the kind of break I'm talking about, coffee break. The resting break is also part of breakthrough. And that's something I started realizing about a month and a half ago, and still not, it's like, I know I need to take a break because I have been sprinting at 190 miles an hour for years now without a break. And I usually take the week off between Christmas and New Year's to do some regenerating without any internet and all of it. And this year, instead of that, I ripped my bathroom out. I broke my bathroom. So I didn't really get the break I usually get there. And as a result of getting through Self-Reliance Festival, some of you who have sent emails are like, why hasn't she answered me yet? I was out of gas. I've been out of gas for 2 weeks. I don't usually run out of gas for 2 whole weeks because I'm not that kind of person. I'm a fairly high energy person, but I've just been out of gas. And so I forced myself to take some breaks, like this morning. I forced myself to not start work until 10, and I just did other things. I was in the sun. I got my feet in the ground, in the soil. Like, I did things that one would do in nature, and had a cup of coffee and had some conversations. And I decided I would do my podcast at 3 p.m. instead of in the morning like I usually do, so that I could have all of the stuff surrounding the podcast for production ready to go before I record this. Because once I'm done recording this, I download the audio file, drop it in my editing software, export the file, post, publish, say, hey, there's a podcast out, and I'm done. And that's what usually has been happening lately since I got here, is that I record the podcast, I download it, I go get a cup of coffee, and then I do all of that, like formatting and web posts and blah, 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 this stuff. And I'm like sitting here going, I really want to leave my chair. I really want to leave my chair. I really want to leave my chair. I want to go outside before it's dark, all of that. And this time, I don't have to have that mental angst of that happening. So I'm just trying a different approach. And I was able to do that because I took a pause break long enough to think about, why are all these systems that have not been broken right now for me? And some of it is that I have had to change how I approach things as my little empire grows. And Paul Wheaton, I see that you wonder if I have found your shirt, and the answer is yes. And I will mail that to you this week. Yay! And then you won't have to wait for me to bring it to you in person when I go speak at your event in July, which I'm looking forward to checking out your place. And yeah, he's saying, I'm asking because you said you were overwhelmed with people asking. By the way, if you haven't gotten an email from me, there is a plan. I am going through emails that I have gotten after SRF now that I am over the I need a break part of that. Anyway, I like literally looked at Paul Wheaton's shirt right before I walked in here. I was like, oh, I still need to mail that thing. Anyway, so this is what I'm doing about it. So I think I have had enough of experiencing the break and breakthrough, and I'm ready for the through part or the breakthrough part. And what I have done in the last 2 weeks since SRF, because SRF was great. Okay. First of all, loved the event, loved how it went, loved all the volunteers, loved the staff, loved the speakers. It was probably the best SRF we've ever done. But by the end of it, I was pretty like, there was no more room in the tank for anything after that. And I started thinking about the last 5 months of break that have happened. And I thought about it on some walks. I thought about it on some evenings when I was by myself. I just started thinking about, what am I going to change? What am I going to do about this? Thanks for the super chat, K-Monk. Appreciate it. And Paul says that shirt is an old friend. I know how you feel. I have some things like that in my life too, including my magnifying glass, which is over there. I was like, well, what can I do? Why did these things happen? And some of the things that happened is my roasting apprentice left, not for a negative reason. Like, we're still friends and she buys my coffee. Her life is going a different direction. That means when I go out of town, there's no backup roaster and there's nobody to ship stuff. And I had to think very carefully about what that means for me, because I can apprentice another person, but it did take me 2 years to get her to where I trusted her to roast when I was not there. So, that was a thing. And so I was like, well, what can I do? And I thought about what works best for me on a productivity and simplicity side. And I realized I needed to change my schedule to accommodate how the roasting interplays with the podcast production schedule in order to do both those things well. And so I roast on Sundays and Thursdays only, unless there's if I had a huge high volume thing happen, I would work it out. But a lot of what happens is I roast a batch, and a batch is bigger than what people ordered. And then I bag those up too. And if somebody else orders before the end of the week, I will ship that coffee as freshly roasted because it's very, very fresh. I do not keep things longer than a week. I actually, when it's been around a week, I'm the one who's drinking that coffee in my coffee maker. So, or people who come by who know that sometimes I have an extra bag or two. And I'm pretty good at predicting how much extra I should make. In this way, I'm able to roast 2 days a week. For Hollow Roast right now. At Christmas Rush, that will not be the case. That's 7 days a week for Christmas Rush. And that's how Christmas Rush works. But if I roast on Mondays and Thursdays, I also produce this podcast on Monday. I also have choir on Monday when I'm singing in the choir. I also have, okay, so you see how that goes, right? All the things land on Monday. And I was like, my last podcast recording of the week is Friday at 10:30 Central, and that's the Homestead Happenings one. If I roast on Sunday and prepare all the stuff to ship Monday, then I wake up Monday and my primary directive is this podcast. I do other things, but my primary directive is this podcast, and everything else that allows me to get ahead of the rest of the week with the rest of the time on Monday. And I tried that last week for the first time. And the problem with doing that last week, it needed to happen. It went well. But the problem with doing that last week was that I still wasn't rested up from Self-Reliance Festival. I didn't get any days off at all since then, which is not a complaint, but it was just it would have been really nice to have one day where it was sort of light duty and I could spend half the day doing something, not work. And, a couple of those days I drove a lot. So that was my rest. And so I started Sunday and went through Friday. And by the time I got to Friday, I was like, man, am I tired. And Easter is coming and I'm cooking for people. And wow, the Living Free in Tennessee Spring Workshop is 3 weeks away. And there's lots of stuff to do between now and then, including putting the kitchen back together, which Luckily, my neighbors put most of it back together with Mama Sauce. I'm just finding the stray things that I have, out in other storage spaces. So, and I had to make sure the menu was happening. And then Chef Brett said, "Hey, I can come cook your event." And I was like, "Well, that's cool, because then I don't need to pre-cook as many things." So I totally took him up on that offer. He'll be here later this week. We're going to go over food. We use the stuff we grow here to cook with. So it's a little different than a typical chef catering situation where he can just order a bunch of stuff from the commercial food system, because I'm more interested in serving food not from the commercial food system, so people can taste what it's really like to eat real meat, for example, that has grown here regeneratively, or the beef we have, or the chickens we have, or the home canned green beans, like all of that stuff. We like people to try those things. In fact, Nighthawk's going to do a pierogi demonstration, and we use, like, Trisha left a whole bunch of flour. I needed like 2 tablespoons of flour yesterday. She left a whole bunch of flour here from the mill around the corner that just went in. And he's like, "I could use that for the pierogi." I was like, perfect, because it's like locally sourced and it's organic and it's really good quality. So that's better than me getting like King Arthur's from the store and doing it that way. So we'll be serving pierogi, which are carbs, I know, but whatever. So what I started doing differently is I started asking myself, what can I do to make this so that I balance some time off for myself? I get the time on my homestead with my animals and etc. And I still keep the work stuff like cruising forward. And I realized that changing the schedule was step number 1. And on the weeks where I'm at a speaking engagement on one of my roasting days, I need to accommodate for that, right? So I'm still working out how that's going to look, because for the spring workshop, I'm here, but I'm certainly not roasting on Thursday of the spring workshop. What I usually do is I look at my subscriptions and roast them all for the week ahead. This time I'm going to reach out to people and say, "Hey, can I process your order a week early so I get your coffee, because I'm going to be out next week?" So I'm realizing that communication, I've been a pretty good communication person, but way better communication is needed for me to break through, to go from break to breakthrough. And working ahead, I thought I was good at working ahead. Nope. I need to work way more ahead than I have been. And that's why I kind of changed how I did today's podcast, because I'm just working ahead so that if something goes wrong, it's still queued up and ready to go, right? I also have always had issues with boundaries. I know you don't believe it, do you? I like to help people, and what I have had to learn is how to help people in a way that really helps people, and not just in the way they always ask me to help them, right? And that is where I get into boundary issues, because people who really, really need my help and I can help, but they're not ready for my help, and then I help them, I end up in the situation of dependency and codependency that's very unhealthy. And I used to do that in relationships. I don't do that in relationships anymore. I used to do that in friendships. I used to do that with just random people who are like, "Hey, I need help." I still help people, but I have learned what my boundaries are, and and to communicate them like sooner rather than later, so that it's not like, "Hey, you're pissing me off because you're going over one of my boundaries you don't know exists. And I have just turned into uber mean, Nicole, because you pissed me off for so many times that I exploded in your face." And rather to say, "Actually, this is over. This is my boundary. This is what I'm willing to do. And if you go over this boundary again, we're going to have an issue," right? Well, first you just explain what the boundary is. And then you say what the consequence is if they keep pushing it. And then the third time you're like, "Here is the consequence of going over the boundary." And that has, for me, like, I just did one today where I thought I had explained in words from my mouth what my boundaries were to somebody. And I was like, I'm putting this in writing. And I was just like, just to be clear, this is where I'm coming from on this project. And this is where I see my role. And this is where I don't see my role. And I just want you to know that, so that we don't have tension or miscommunication or disappointment. Because if there's disappointment, it's now, because this is my boundary, right? So that's been super cool to start working on even harder. And Angela says, hey, are you Angela, my cousin? Just had this conversation with somebody today. Kumbaya, baby. I bet that's my cousin. I just, I think I call her Angie. Anyway, I have tapped into a network of experts who are around me. Oh, good. It is my cousin. Hi. I've tapped into a network of experts who have been in our network for a long time. They have been attracted to our network. They've been here the whole time. I've paid some of them. Others I've tried to pay and they won't let me, for help on issues where I'm like, Nicole has this many hours and this many things to do, and much better at this than those other things. Can you help me like put this into some semblance of order or run this, etc.? And that's something I realized about a month before Self-Reliance Festival. I'm really good at marketing. Also, other people are really good at marketing. In fact, there are a whole bunch of people who are better at marketing than I am, and I can pay them money to market my stuff. Shocking. And then stuff does better and brings in more money to pay the people, it's like, it's a cycle. And for me, that's been super important. I had a conversation with somebody the other day. So at Self-Reliance Festival, we'll be announcing this tomorrow. There's going to be a poultry processing workshop the day after Self-Reliance Festival Sunday. So it'll be Monday. And it starts with a demo from Joel Salatin of how to process a chicken. And then I have people coming in to do the class. And he, I think, needs to be to the airport by a certain time. So he won't be there for the whole class. And somebody said, well, you need to reach out to these two companies and ask them to sponsor this event. And then he followed it with it needs to be you. You can't delegate that. And I'm like, yeah, I know that. So that's totally going to happen. And by freeing me up on the marketing side, right, I now have time to make phone calls. And the worst thing that happens is I cold call and nothing, it goes nowhere. And the best thing that happens is we get a couple of more sponsors, which helps keep the festival and these workshops going, because they, that's how we, like the tickets are so cheap to the stuff. They don't feel cheap to some people when they buy them, but they're so cheap to these events that we have to have sponsors to make it work. And I really should. This is a boundary issue. I should increase the price. But what I see happening at Self-Reliance Festival and related events is people come and they barely eked under the, they had a problem with the early bird rate of $75, but they managed to make it happen. And that paired with traveling there and lodging and food and taking time off work was a hard decision to make, but they made that decision. And they come in and they're like, this better be worth my $75. And I'm like, it's worth your $250. But you got it for 75. And they come in and I watch them change from I can't afford something like this to I'm coming to everyone in the future. I have figured out how I've had, in fact, I have an email I need to read on the Self-Reliance Festival YouTube. Somebody who was like, this is how my life has transformed since I started going to Self-Reliance Festival and changed my mindset, met people who could connect me with important resources or ways to learn. I started these things and now, debt is paid off, or I've started a side hustle and it's turned into a business and I don't have to be my job anymore. I have stories like that coming out of it. And right now, I think if I increase the price to higher and don't rely on the sponsors, I'm going to not get those people as much. And I really think the magic of Self-Reliance Festival is that. And that's the magic that's hard to explain, because all of the other stuff brings the right people there. And some of the people who are there don't need that transformation, but without them there to meet the people who they say the one thing that makes the person take ownership for controlling their future, if we don't have the whole network, then it doesn't work. I stopped telling people why. Here's what I mean by that. Some shit went wrong in my life this year. And as a result, I have missed the mark on some commitments. And what I have done is, when I'm aware I missed the mark, I've said, I've missed the mark on this commitment. And this is what I'm doing to fix it. And I apologize. And I haven't told them why. I haven't said my grandma died. I haven't said whatever. It's just been like, I missed the mark. I told you I was going to do it by this time and I didn't get it done until that time. And I'm sorry. And this is the best I can do to make up for that. And the reason I've done that is nobody cares about why. And if I have to rely on why to get understanding for not reaching out in my commitments, then I am giving myself an excuse to not reach my commitments. And I have a tendency to say yes to too many things and overcommit, and then have a hard time living up to all of my commitments. And that has to change in order for me to break through. Because who wants to work with somebody who doesn't meet their commitments, right? So I stopped telling people why, and it's actually interesting how that has changed. Because I can't fall back on the why, I'm more likely to, when it really needs to happen, push through and pull an all-nighter if it's an all-nighter that's needed to get the thing done. But I've also got much better at saying timelines that might actually happen instead of the timeline I have to trick myself into think I'm going for to actually get it done when I say it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have to play that game with myself. Simplification's key. I am simplifying everything right now. The house breaking has been great for that because I had to pack all the stuff up. And now I'm looking at all this garbage in boxes as it comes out of the boxes going, like, why do I even have this thing? This thing's actually a useful thing. But why do I even have this thing? I don't even like this thing. I haven't used this thing in 2 years. And so piles of stuff have been leaving, which simplifies my world. But it's also helping me think of ways to simplify the way I do business here and the way I run my life here. Working ahead, I already talked about. I've clarified my availability pretty strongly. And, I've reached a point in my career where a lot of people ask me to speak. And I used to just say yes all the time. And now it's like, I'm booked, man. I'm booked. I've been contracted in the fall and I've already accepted a deposit for these speaking engagements. And if I add too many once, I don't do a good job, and I want people to get their money's worth. So that's been eye-opening for me. And then I have, with the whole mental breakdown I was talking about, I've identified 2 things I need to adjust. And one is a fear that I have of failure. I don't want to ever fail. And a little bit of fear of failure is a great motivator for me. But when it becomes huge and overpowering and puts me in a place of fear when I make decisions, then I make stupid ass decisions. And so I've been working on that one since I realized it exists. I kind of became aware of that fear in February, and I think that's been a big part of what the adjustment I've been talking, or the breakdown that's been going in me. And the second one goes back to things in my childhood about being loved for who I am, because and this is something that's just like, I'm 50 years old and I'm just now realizing that I don't know that I am afraid of this anymore. I've been afraid to show people the full breadth and depth and intensity of my personality because it will overwhelm them and they won't talk to me and they won't love me anymore. Well, I've been aware of this for a bit, and I decided that people who cannot appreciate the full breadth of my personality and the intensity of me as a person don't need to be friends with me. I don't need to be friends with people who can't accept me for who I am. And it took me 50 years to get there, but here I am. So those are sort of the 2 breakdowns that have happened. And when so the fail one, I'm not done addressing. The full breadth and intensity of my personality I have addressed, and it has freed me as a person, and I do a whole lot less stupid stuff as a result of that, right? So anyway, it's pretty cool. Red Flyer Media says, SRF is the single most value-added festival I've ever attended or worked at. Attendees have the potential to walk away with more actionable information than everything else I have witnessed. Cool. We've also got the empathy versus sympathy situation. I'll give you ways to get out of hole versus people that want you to get into the hole and complain together. Yeah, I don't play the complain game. If every time I walk away from somebody, I just heard how bad everything is and no solutions and excuses why they can't do the one thing that they're like, so what's your advice? And I say, well, I guess I'd start by stopping my spending so much and start addressing the debt situation. And then they tell me why they can't. Okay. K-Box says, is the audio's out? Is it out for everybody else? I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it looks like it's recording everywhere else. I will double check. But if I do that, then I just need settings for a second. Audio. Okay. Now it looks like it's still going. So it's at least still recording. Good. Angela can hear me. Hi, Angie. What was I talking to you guys about anyway? Probably my mental stuff. Anyway, if I let the, I don't know, I totally lost my train of thought, and that happens sometimes. So one of you is going to scream it at me in the thing. I identified these two things I have to mentally adjust, and I finished one of them. I'm working on the other one, and that is freeing me up to be what I need to be able to move our network forward, to be able to move my businesses forward, to be able to grow as a person. And then I did come up with something I call the decide list. And if you do not make a decision, that is a decision. I don't know who told me that. And I think it was at SRF. No decision is a decision. And so sometimes I take too long to make decisions because people ask me questions after 8 p.m. and questions after 8 p.m. do not get answered. And then I forget to answer them, or because it's hard to think about what I want my answer to be. And that's because I make, maybe 40,000 decisions a day. I make a lot of decisions every day. And big ones are hard. And if you're coming from a place of fear of failure, then you're like, but if I make the wrong decision, I'm going to fail. And then I'm going to be out on the street, completely without anything. And I'm not going to survive. Okay. Well, that end result is highly unlikely for most things that anybody makes a decision about, even really big things, right? So I have decided to decide. And it's for two reasons. One, I have not kept up with all my social posts that I want to do to properly promote the show and other things we're working on here. Like, I haven't done the TikTok videos. I haven't done a lot of things. I'm not on Instagram, all of it. And I haven't finished setting up Nostr, which I will get done by the end of today. And that's because I didn't decide to do them. And I decided instead to do other things. And so this morning, I changed my decide list. And so now it's like I'm deciding to do the social posts, these ones, and not those other ones, so that I'm very clear with myself and don't bring any guilt on about the stuff I've decided not to do. I'm going to do the stuff I've decided to do. I'm going to do it well, and I'm going to do it all the way. So my dry erase board, which I have not adjusted yet, is about to have the word decide. And these are the things I'm focusing on this week. And one of the things I focused on this week was making sure the live stream schedule is very clear in advance before doing the show, making sure all the show notes and those things are set up on my posts and my website, and some of these other engineering stuff that needs to happen for the content we create, so that it's like super easy to go in there and record and then get it out in a timely manner. That's what I decided to decide about this week. And last week it was, I decided to change my coffee roasting schedule. And that meant that I had to do something hard on Easter Sunday, and that was get up and roast coffee, which is maybe not what that needs to be. I never realized how much alike we were until today. Yeah, you and I are a lot alike. That's why we like hanging out at the family reunion, Angie. So the good of this is the conversations I've been able to have about Self-Reliance Festival. So one thing I was already doing was I was prioritizing new conversations for the next Self-Reliance Festival over some follow-up I know I need to do from the last one. And as a result of that, we may have an entirely really cool and interesting creative thing happen on Saturday night. I don't know yet. We're in conversations about it because I made time to talk to somebody about it. And all of the elements I have wanted to be there from an artistic standpoint appear to be coming together from multiple avenues. And it could be really cool for the festival, and it could be really cool for the freedom culture that we want to cultivate in our network. And I've also managed to start something with Toolman Tim, where we do a radio show highlighting different content creators once a quarter. And I think that's been a very good, it's been good for my show. It's been good for me. And it's been a good service to all of you who are building your own creative empires now. I think the more we focus on helping each other grow, the more all of us grow. It's kind of like that CrossFit model with the pie, where this is the entire pie of what's possible with CrossFit. And we don't just argue over who gets which part of the pie. We grow the pie bigger and bigger and bigger for everybody by helping prop each other up. And, and I think that's what that project with Toolman Tim is intended to do. And we have some other things in the offing that are going to happen that way. I've always been sought after as a speaker. This year, the kind of sought after that I have been has changed completely. And I'm actually in discussions with somebody about my entire image, which is, it's always me, guys, but some things I need to do with my image as a result of that, which you will see some more consistency in the marketing of the podcast, for example, and the branding of the podcast moving forward. And I'm really working on doing fewer things and finishing them. So doing fewer things better, because I've always been a polymath, and I'm super interested in starting all sorts of different things. And I have started a lot of things this year, and I'm not unhappy about that. But I'm also making sure that I think about doing fewer things better. For example, I'm already engaged to speak in May, and that speaking engagement is a significant time investment for me, and it needs to feed the rest of the empire. So I am putting time in now, working on how all of that grows our network and does other things connections wise, wherein before I would have been like, here's my awesome speech, give my awesome speech, people go clap, 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 people follow me around talking to me afterwards for the event, and then nothing comes of it. I'm done with doing that. But when you have 5 or 6 speaking engagements in 1 month, it's hard to feed them all into the system unless you have a really well-honed system with staff, which I don't have. So then that might change. But right now that I don't have it. So that's something that has been pretty cool that I learned about Break and Breakthrough. So here's what's next is you're going to see changes in branding a little bit, nothing major. You're going to see probably more attention on the speaking engagements I have. Like I'm going to Montana to speak at Paul Wheaton's. I'm going to be at the Exit and Build Land Summit with John Bush. Like I'm going to be at these places. I'm going to be at Toolman Tim's workshop in Canada, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to be at the Midwest Prepper Regional Prepper meetup in September. You're going to hear about it. And it's going to be clear how it relates to what we're doing here. You're going to probably hear more about decisions I'm making about Holler Roast Coffee as we move forward. And Harvest Cooking, the YouTube channel, is going to get off the ground. I'm like this close to having the studio done. So I'm pretty excited about that too. There's a lot of cool things happening next. And part of what's happening next is I'm going to spend more time on my homestead and also less time, if that makes sense. Doesn't make sense at all, does it? Well, I'm going to travel a little bit more this year than I did in former years. But the time that I'm here, I am making more time to spend time on the homestead doing homesteady things. Wherein before, I was just freaking underwater the whole time doing worky things. And I think I've been like Paul Wheaton's on my mind, and now I'm talking like him. I'm doing worky things. Anyway, I will be more available for the homestead things here that I have not done as much in the last couple of years as we've been growing Self-Reliance Festival and other stuff. So it could be really cool. We'll see how the breakthrough goes. I'm looking to get out and about and on other people's shows and finish my book and get that promoted. So it's mostly written. First draft is not done, guys, but my first draft is 3/4 done right now. And I aim to have the rest of that done. I would like to have it done before the end of the month, but I know me and I know it'll be in May when I get it done. And I'll probably end up leaving the homestead to finish it, which is really funny. So I'm very excited about where this is going. I really hope that I'm done with the break in Breakthrough, but I can't sit here and declare that I am done with the break in Breakthrough. But I'm really hoping I am, because I am ready for the through in Breakthrough. And I want to end on this. If you're hearing this and you're just hearing about the word of the year for the first time in this show, think about choosing your own word of the year. Don't wait until December 31st to do it if you think it might be something that can help you. Words that I've heard people use are connect, love, freedom, grow, balance, breakthrough, right? All sorts of different words that you can choose. There are a lot of people. Somebody in here said their word was build earlier in the comments. There are lots of great ways that the word can benefit you, and the key is to start. Maybe that should be your word. Start. If that's your word, though, probably next year your word's going to be finish. I almost chose finish one year, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for the negative side of finish. Jenny was like, I know, Nicole. I was like, yeah, you're right. It could be the wrong kind of finish. So yes, Paul, I have been to Montana before. I love that state. I'm going to bring lots of warm clothes because I'm not used to cold anymore. So, and I know in the summer it's not cold, but it is cold to me in the evenings. And yeah. So that's my deal. But yeah, start your word of the year. Think about it at least once a week and see what it can bring for you. Because I think it's really cool. But do be ready for the dark side of the word, because that every time I'm like, yeah, should have seen that coming, grow. The entire world has a pandemic shutdown situation in my year of grow. I was like, well, I'm doing the opposite of growing right now. Like, my revenue flatlined. Whew. But I grew anyway that year. I grew anyway. And that's pretty darn cool, I think. So that's something I'm super thankful for now in hindsight. Not the pandemic and the shutdown. I think that the way we reacted to that was a bunch of BS, but it happened and I grew through it. And now I can grow through just about anything, I think. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can support me in a couple ways. One, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Head on over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.